Welcome to We Build Great Apartment Communities, the only show dedicated to the process and strategies for transforming apartment buildings to thriving communities. I am your host, John Brackett, and welcome to the show. All right, welcome everybody to another great episode of We Build Great Apartment Communities. I have a great guest here. It is Gabriel Hamel. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Man, I am glad you're here with your experiences. I know we're going to get into another great discussion about how we are positively impacting communities. So, Gabe, I'm going to give you a quick intro so that our audience has a pretty good feel for who you are as not only a person, but as an investor as well. Right?
Sure.
And so let me give you a really quick summary so that our audience can start engaging into who you are as a person and an investor. So Gabriel Hamel is a real estate investor whose passion for real estate business and financial freedom has helped him amass a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio consisting of single-family homes, multifamily apartments, commercial real estate, and mobile home parks. So from humble beginnings, a book on real estate, and a strong desire for financial freedom, Gabriel set out to find creative ways to start purchasing income-producing real estate. And now, folks, he's here to share his experiences with us. So I'm really glad to have you. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. Good to be on here with you.
Awesome. Okay, hey, bud. So I'm going to dive into this.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm going to start off with a question that I'm curious about. Right. So talk a little bit about that first book.
Yep.
Okay, and then why real estate? What was the first book, first of all? And why did that move you into this industry?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question because it's a book that I think's impacted a lot of people's lives and especially in the real estate world. But it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki.
Interesting.
And for me, it was a couple years out of high school, and school was not my thing, right? Like I stayed in high school basically to wrestle and for the social aspect. Like that's why I stayed in school. So college was not something that I was super excited about. Every kid's parent was like, go to college. Even my parents who never went to college and didn't have any high paying jobs were like, maybe you should go to college. And I just looked at the 9 to 5, like, why would I want that? And so I actually had joined the Army National Guard my senior year of high school. So in 99, in 2000, I go to basic training, and then I graduate high school, also in 2000. But about 2 years after that, I was doing different odd and end jobs, different things, and kind of doing my thing. But around 2002, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And really, it was the first book that I chose to read that I didn't want to put down, right? It was the first book I ever read word for word. And it's not a how-to. It's just a mindset around money and finances. And every single page, I'm just like, yep. This makes sense to me. It's not the normal path that most people take and what you've been taught in school. And it just made sense. And so, shortly after reading that book, I was deployed to Iraq and Kuwait for about a year with the Army National Guard and Infantry Unit. So I spent a year over in the Middle East, and I just started telling all my friends over there, hey, I'm going to come back and I'm going to build this real estate empire. And I read this book, and they're like, you're an idiot. Like, how are you going to do this? Like,
what are you talking about, man? What are you talking about, right? We're in the middle of a war.
Yep. And I was like, I'm surviving, and I'm coming back, and I'm doing this. And I was living in my friend's attic before that, for like $100 a month. And
I'm telling them,
I'm telling them all these big goals and dreams, and they're like, you're crazy. How? And I said, I don't know how, but I know I will. So I just had it fixed in my mind that this is what I would do. And then I came back, in 2004 and got completely out in 2005. And 2005 is when I bought my first house. And we can dig into that and kind of go down the rest of the story if you'd like.
Yeah. So tell us about your first home. Did you buy it to occupy it, or did you actually rent it out?
Yeah, both. And so, now everyone talks, call it house hacking. And to me, it just made sense. I bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. I rented out 2 of the rooms, and I lived for less than I could have lived anywhere else. But what's interesting, in 2005, it was during the subprime. And so 2005, I went to the bank, and I had no job, no income. And they said, yeah, we'll give you a loan. And I was like, gosh, this is easy. I can do this. So they gave me a loan, 100% financing, and rented out 2 of the rooms. 2006, I did the same thing. 2007, I did a 5% down deal. And in the meantime, also in 06, I opened up a small nutrition store. But by about 2008, things had changed. So I'd had those 3 houses. They cash flowed a little bit. And the risk was really minimal because I was essentially 100% leveraged. But by 2008, my store wasn't making any money at all. My first son was born, and I really just went, oh shit, what do I do? And I went back to the bank to see if I could get another house, and they said, no way. They said, lending guidelines have changed. You need a bunch of money down. You actually need a job. You need income.
You actually need a job. Like, that's classic, right? Man. That's
I'm going.
You can't just come in here and fog up my glasses anymore. You actually need income.
Yep. And so, my thought of, gosh, this is so easy. I'm just going to do this every year. I had a shift. It was like, what do I do? Do I go get just a regular job until I can qualify for a loan? Or what? So I shut my store down and I just took all these odd and end jobs. And so I didn't have a college degree. And so, I literally was doing odd and end jobs that I found on Craigslist. I eventually landed a minimum wage job in a special education class. And, a few months into that job, I was like, this is not what I want to do anymore. I either need to get real serious about investing in real estate, or I'm going to be, stuck doing a job that I don't enjoy for the rest of my life. And I went after looking for properties that the sellers could finance. And so 2009, 10, 11, 12, and 13, I bought a bunch of small multifamily with no and low money down seller financing deals. And that's where I really got my start in truly committing to investing in real estate, was finding sellers that were in a position and that wanted to carry financing on the deal because the bank said no. I knew there had to be another way to finance property. And that's how I really started building my portfolio with seller financing.
So that was a catalyst. Huh? That was a catalyst. So, man, I love this business for a lot of different reasons, but my main love comes from the fact that this business is all about problem solving, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
You ran into a problem, right? You had to jump through. So, of course, your wrestling background, that I picked up on that right away. So what weight class?
I was 125.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. So I used to wrestle in high school and college as well. So I really...
I was wondering, I thought I saw a little cauliflower.
It's not, it's not as bad. It's not as bad as it used to be. But awesome, man. So run into a problem, right? In fact, you ran into several. You found a way to solve that problem. So talk to us about seller financing, right? So how did you, in fact, why don't you share your most profitable deal with seller financing and what you learned from that? Because I think that's going to be a great way to walk our audience through what that looks like and the value of that type of structure.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's hard to say which deal would be the most profitable. I buy and hold everything. And other than those first 3 deals that I don't know if you can consider those traditional financing, those first during the subprime, every deal I've ever done from then on has been non-traditional financing. So almost all seller financing, some private money, some hard money eventually. So I don't know if there's one that sticks out as far as the most profitable. I mean, some of these are sitting on large equity positions, some cash flow better than others. But the very first deal I did, I found it on Craigslist. The seller wanted to carry financing. At the time, I was afraid to ask for hard money. I knew nobody with money, so I didn't want to ask for private money. But that very first deal was a really low money down deal. And then the prorates and the rents I collected at closing made it to where it was essentially a no money down deal. And so all these deals I did from then on up through 13 were all no money down deals. And so this is before I knew anything about cap rate and cash on cash return. I just knew if I had no money in the deal, it was an infinite return. And my risk was so minimal. So even though, and I get asked a lot, like, well, how were you highly leveraged? It was, well, yeah, I was highly leveraged, but these properties were poorly managed, under rented. They had deferred maintenance. I thought it was way more of a risk to not do the deal. I had absolutely nothing to lose. I get asked how much reserves did you have? I had no reserves.
Man, Gabe, please repeat what you just said. I love that so much, man. Please repeat that, because there's a nugget of gold in what you just said. Where you talk about that doing the deal, it was more risky for you to not do the deal. Can you just please say that again, man? I love that.
Yeah. There was more risk in not doing the deal than having no reserves and doing the deal. I mean, I literally had nothing to lose. It was, I can buy this property with no money. And I did this multiple times with small multifamily. Buying it with no money, my risk was completely minimal. Not doing that deal, I've never bought a property that I regret buying. So had I not bought these properties,
that's a great problem to have.
Down,
great problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. And the thing is, every single property I bought, even though there's not a property I regret buying, I could have talked myself out of every single deal. That first seller financing deal, it was 2 duplexes side by side, 4 units. They're cash flowing. I'm running the numbers and I'm going, what am I missing? What am I missing? What am I missing? I could have found a reason. I mean, there weren't great tenants. The properties had some issues. All the what ifs that could have happened, the what ifs is like, what if all the tenants move out? What if there's bigger problems that I don't see? What if there's something that I don't know? Like, what if all those what ifs didn't outweigh, again, that risk of not doing the deal? Right. That first deal gave me the confidence to do it again and again and again. And so I think there's a lot to be said about pulling the trigger and jumping in. Not every deal is going to be your favorite deal or the best deal, but after that first one, the rest gets a lot easier.
Hey man, so I'm going to unpack what you said, okay, for our audience, because there's so many nuggets in there. I'm going to unpack that a little bit. So the first thing that I heard was, 1 + 1 = 2, right? Sure. Okay, don't complicate this business. I think sometimes people can get so focused on spreadsheets and analyzing stuff. Hell, I've even been there. In fact, the very first deal that I lost, like a big deal, I call it my $1 million mistake. Okay, paralyzed myself, great deal, moving too slow, negotiating pennies when the opportunity cost of that was literally $1 million, right? Never made that mistake again. And guess how much I was negotiating extra for? 30 grand, man. 30 grand. Okay. Never made that mistake again. Never forgot that. I'm glad it happened early on in my career. Never forgot that mistake. Now, what you just said though, I absolutely love, right? It's look, man, I didn't know anything about cap rate. I didn't know anything about, right? These complicated ratios, right? Yeah. Internal rate of return. Didn't even know how to calculate an internal rate of return. But what I did understand, okay, was 1 + 1 = 2, right? This property, okay, what I understood was revenue minus expenses equals cash flow, and it made sense to me. Didn't have any money in the deal. It was more risky for me not to do the deal for that reason. Genius, man. I love that. One of my very good friends, one of my best friends, one of my mentors, known this guy for 8 years before I knew that he was worth like $200 million, right? Okay, great guy. And he would tell me something. I mean, I knew he owned a lot of real estate. I just didn't know it was that much. But he told me something that I never forgot. He said, John, if I can't make a deal pencil on a napkin, I don't do it.
Yep. No, it's
so man,
so
look,
true.
It's so true. But I love what you said. Okay, so now walk us through this deal, right? So you put the deal together, you close on it, you take title to it. Then what happens next?
Yeah, and so first I want to go back and just talk about that math, right? It really is a simple.
Yeah, let's talk about the math.
People do overcomplicate it, right? It's math and intuition, like trust your instinct, and it's basic math. Like you can overanalyze the hell out of the deal and again make it not work. But yeah, so I close on that deal, and then I do a couple more seller financing deals, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is amazing. Like there's actually sellers out there that want to carry financing, and a couple deals in, I thought to myself, I need to go educate all these sellers on the advantage of seller financing, because I was closing these deals super excited that I was bringing no money to the table. And then but these sellers were like thanking me for buying the property. And I'm going, why are they so happy? I mean, I'm getting this house with no money down. Why are they so happy? But I found that these sellers were tired, really good people. They had typically managed the property, and all the seller financing deals I've done, in a sense, kind of fit a similar demographic. So good people, they own multiple properties, and that generation, men and women in their 60s and 70s, have typically managed the property themselves. And so they're just burnt. They're burnt out. They've been landlord, maintenance person. They're dealing with turnover. They're dealing with all the headaches that real estate can have, and they're just ready to move on. They want a new level of passivity. These properties are also typically under-rented, poorly managed, deferred maintenance. So I get that upside. You're taking a headache away from them. You're creating a new level of passivity. They become the bank. A lot of times they've owned the property for 30-something years, and they're just done. They want to be hands-off. And so you're creating this scenario of giving them what they want, right? And a lot of sellers, they're either stuck on down payment, purchase price, or interest rate. I didn't have the luxury to find any sellers other than sellers that didn't care about a down payment. Now, some sellers, it's the interest rate they're stuck on. Some it's the price. But you give them what they want. If I can give a seller as much of what they want as possible and still make the deal work for me, great. Sometimes that works. Sometimes we're just too far off from each other to make the deal work.
Right.
But so originally I thought I have to go educate all these sellers. And I reflected back and I realized every seller that did a deal, they already knew what seller financing was. They already understood what being the bank was to earn interest on their money. They've, in a lot of cases, have paid the asset off. If they were to sell it, they have to pay a huge capital gain up front.
Right.
They also would have to go put that money into a new deal, meaning they'd have to be an active investor. They need to go actively find a new deal. Or if you paid them off, not only are they paying a capital gain, now where are they going to put that money? Into the stock market or spend it? And so this was a way for these sellers to have income. A lot of times I'm essentially paying their retirement for, in some cases, the rest of their life, depending on the details of the deal and the terms of the deal. And so it just kind of hit me. I was like, wow, I've never had to explain what seller financing to a seller. So I focused my time and energy on finding sellers that already understood the advantage. So then the conversation was as simple as, if I already knew they wanted to carry financing, I would just ask, hey, what kind of terms are you interested in? Right. And I would leave it at that. That would be the most basic question ever. Hey, what kind of terms are you interested in? They would tell me, and in about 3 seconds, I would know, is it price, down payment, or interest rate that they're sensitive to? And then I'd see if I can, make a deal that penciled out. And then it went back to the basic math.
Man, Ray, I really appreciate you explaining that. So I know this is something that everybody is thinking right now, right? So how do you find these deals? What's your process? I mean, I'm sure that it varies per market, but what does that look like?
Genuine relationships, like truly. I've never done any kind of, marketing, advertising, flyers, anything like that. Not saying that, maybe there'll come a time where it makes sense for me to do that. Early on, it was almost all Craigslist and just meeting people that were literally advertising that they wanted to carry financing. And then I started going out and just having conversations with people. And as I moved into some larger multifamily, I actually found that there were sellers that were more interested in carrying financing because, again, as investors, they understood the advantage of being the one carrying the financing.
Right.
So a deal I talk about a lot is my last mobile home park purchase. He's a guy that I reached out to almost a decade before. He was building these beautiful A-class properties in town. And I reached out to him just because I admired his work and I wanted to know, who's this guy? What's his story? I had no intention to ever buy anything from him or sell him anything. I wasn't trying to get anything from him other than, man, you built some awesome buildings. Like how? What's your story? And he was buying small multifamily back in the 70s. And he was gracious to just kind of share a story with me. And we'd kept in touch, throughout the years. And he hit me up, about a year ago and said, hey, a friend of mine's selling a single family home in the town over. Are you interested? And I said, no, I'm not, but I'm really focusing on value add multifamily and more specifically mobile home parks. And he said, I have a mobile home park. And I said, well, would you sell or finance it? And he said, absolutely. Now it wasn't a napkin, but it was a small yellow piece of paper that we,
hey, that still qualifies, man.
Right? It still qualifies, right? But because I had reached out to him, previously, and we'd kept in contact, we only met up or talked maybe once a year, but we kept an eye on what each other were doing. We had that relationship. So when it came down to, for one, I told him very specifically what I was looking for. I had no idea the guy owned mobile home parks. And he said, I'll sell it to you. And I said, would you sell it finance? He said, yes. The terms were very favorable because he knew who I was. I wasn't just some, random person. But when I look back on the best deals I've done, it always comes back to relationships, the off-market stuff, relationships and letting people know what you're looking for. If you don't open your mouth and tell people what you're looking for, no one's going to bring you a deal.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great advice. Really, really good advice. So, the biggest lesson learned there would be what?
Tell people what you're looking for.
Tell people what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now we've moved the conversation forward. Now you're in multifamily investing. You also own some apartment buildings, right? So where did you go from that first deal, right? That first apartment deal that you did, and how did you progress your business forward? Are you still doing predominantly seller finance deals, or are you actually, capitalizing them now with your dollars, investor dollars, bank money? What do the capital structures look like now?
Yeah. I still approach sellers, whether listed or anonymous property. I always ask about seller financing because I do think there's a lot of flexibility with seller finance. You go to a bank, they're going to tell you these are the terms of the deal. Like this is what you need. With seller financing, one of the most beautiful things is it's as creative as you and the seller can get. The most recent deal I did that I was just talking about, the guy that I reached out to 10 years previously, that was less than a 2% down deal. And that was a 200% cash on cash return. And so even though he was a sophisticated investor, the terms of that deal was so sweet because that's not where his time and energy was. His time and energy was on something else. So it created a scenario that was still good for him. It was also really good for me. And so that was the seller financing deal. As far as other ways to finance, I didn't borrow any kind of hard money or private money for a lot of years, but my very first private money lender was very interesting. So all the deals I bought from 2009 through 13, all seller financing deals. And in 2014, I had the market on my side. Interest rates hit 4% for the first time. And my rents were up. These homes were improved. And so I went and refinanced all my seller financing deals into long-term bank financing. Now, I've never used bank financing on a purchase other than those first 3 deals. I've always used seller financing, hard private money. So when I paid off one of these sellers, she said, "Hey, what am I going to do with this money?" And I just casually said, "Hey, you can lend it back to me on a deal." And she kind of laughed. And then a couple months later, she called back and said, "Hey, how serious were you about that?" And I said, I was serious. If I find a deal, would you be interested in financing it? She said, "Absolutely." Because we had already had that track record. We already had that relationship.
Right.
And it was the same position. So in 2014, first of all, in 2014, all these homes appraised out 70% loan to value or more. So when I tried to traditionally finance that, every one of those homes I would have had to bring 30% to the table.
Of course.
I didn't have to do that. And I didn't have the ability to do it at the time. I didn't have that money. But that particular seller, she was in the same position she was in originally. Was she didn't want to go actively invest. She didn't want to just throw her money in the stock market. She has a money problem. It's not a bad problem. She's got a bunch of money now because I just paid her off and refied. But she said, "What do I do with this?" So she became my very first private money lender. And then I didn't borrow any kind of hard money for a long time, but going back to relationships, I laugh about this with the hard money lender now. I walked into her office probably looking like a complete crazy man, just saying, "Hey, we're going to do business together one day." I think I owned maybe 2 houses at the time. I didn't ask her to borrow money for like a decade later, but I was like, "Hey, we need to know each other. At some point, we're going to do business together." And she looked at me like I was crazy, but that started that relationship.
Sure.
So when it came time, to borrow money on deals that supported hard money, we had that relationship, and I wasn't just some stranger off the street by that point. And so it just goes back to the relationship side of things. And then
awesome.
Showing that track record. Yeah.
What a great story. So now I'm going to ask you, we're in a very unique market right now, right? COVID-19. And so how has COVID-19 changed the real estate investment landscape for seller financing? Has it created more opportunity for seller financing, or has it created more strict restrictions around seller financing? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, just COVID-19 as a whole, I don't think we've seen real estate or economic as a whole. I don't think we've seen the economic impacts at all yet. Not even the beginning of what some of the economic impacts going to be with business. And then real estate's been interesting too. Like the market that I'm in, and like a lot of markets across the country, inventory is still really low. And so homes are selling for a lot. I mean, inventory is low and there's a lot of competition and interest rates are low. I don't sell a lot of properties. And so, I've shifted in the sense of I have recently put a couple of my smaller single family homes for sale. A couple of them are pending at, above list price. And so I've talked to a lot of people across the country that are seeing the same things. So I'm looking at this point to capitalize. I don't like to sit on cash. I think, it's, some will say cash is trash. But I do think having the ability to capitalize when the market shifts. And I do think that's coming. When it be, I don't know, but again, trusting my instinct, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities in the next couple of years than there is right now. That being said, I still think it's always a good time if you buy right. And so if I buy a property, I've been, I have my hands in a handful of things right now. If I close on a property, it's going to pencil today. It's going to cash flow the day I close on it, even with upside potential. Like that's how I've always done it. Even if it's under rented or poorly managed, even if there's an upside, I never bank on that upside. that's just a bonus. It has to make sense today. If it makes sense today.
I get it. I get it, man. I get it. 1 + 1 = 2. I love it. I love it. That's what keeps you out of trouble and it keeps you profitable. So Gabe, talk a little bit though about, you said you don't feel we've seen the true impacts or the true impact of COVID-19 yet, right? Like you still feel that, the market's going to shake out and there are going to be some changes down the road. Talk a little bit about that. Why do you feel that's the case? And just if you can elaborate on that, I think that's a very valuable conversation right now because one of the things that I love about free market, like here in the US, is everyone is right down the middle, right? Which creates a free market. I mean, no one has the same opinion. And that's where we create opportunity. If everybody shared the same opinion, all the opportunity would be competed away. So anytime we're in an environment where there's no consensus, I love that, right? Yeah. Because it spells massive, massive opportunity. If everybody thought the same, acted the same, pivoted the same, you would be able to predict what was next, and consequently, there would be no opportunity. Now, being that everybody is split right down the middle on this issue, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, for one, I'm far from an economist by any means, but
instinct. Let's use the gut instinct and the napkin methodology.
Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got.
That's how I like to work, man.
Yeah. Our entire economy is propped up on printed money, right? So money is being printed. I mean, the poor, the middle class, the wealthy, the ultra wealthy, everyone's has access to some level of money right now. I mean, people are making more on unemployment than they would working. So it's like, why go back to work? And then those businesses are also getting, the PPP money, and there's just a lot of money being just kind of shoved out there in the economy. So we haven't seen yet what will happen when that money stops. At some point, we can't just print our way out. That being said, like industries like the restaurant, a lot of the commercial, I think there's going to be a lot of empty commercial buildings. I think there's going to be a lot of businesses. A local gym owner here, she said it right. I think about this often. She said, "Hey, I'm not worried about the couple months that I'm shut down." She said, "I'm worried about who's going to show up, who's going to show back up when I open back up." And that's where I think we're going to see a lot of businesses shutting down and really economic impact when these businesses that have been able to kind of hang in there in the short term, not be able to hang on in the long term. And so that's business owners, that's their employees, that's going to affect housing. I mean, there's just, I don't know what that impact's going to be, but I do think it could be substantial. And I'm just trying to pay attention. I'm just trying to be aware and just kind of be paying attention more than anything and be ready to make shifts as they come.
Well, I really appreciate the feedback. I too kind of ditto that. I think we haven't really seen or really understand the true impact. And I agree with you. You can't always buy your way out of problems, right? In many cases you can. I think that the challenge here is we've been printing money for so long that it just becomes a lot more difficult to do that. The opposite spectrum of that though is, typically when we go through a recession, the way that we drive ourselves out of that or we pull ourselves out of that is monetary policy, right? Interest rates, well, you don't have too many of those bullets anymore. The other side of that spectrum is government spending. Okay, well, we're doing that right now. We're injecting a lot of cash into the markets. Well, when you inject that much cash into the market, prices eventually are going to go up, right? I mean, prices at some point have to rise. But that's why I'm so bullish on real estate, because when you have a lot of money chasing product out there in the marketplace, especially with low rates over time, I think we're going to start to see the impact of that through higher prices. But who knows when that is? But if you're a buy and hold person, I think you're at some point going to benefit from that. But there's no crystal ball, right? Especially in this business. That's why we have so much opportunity. Okay, Gabe, so I'm going to pivot really quick. Really quickly, and I appreciate the comment there. Investing is a very unique business, right? And I think you're a great example of that. Problem solver. You find ways to get things done. You're good with people. And, you do what you say, right? In this business, you do what you say. It means a lot, especially long term.
Have to.
Yeah, absolutely have to. So, what are some of the qualities that you see in very successful real estate investors, right? If you had to name the top 3 qualities, what would that be?
I think having the mindset, the strong mindset, desire, discipline, and just the drive to do it, the determination to get it done.
So talk a little bit about mindset, right? Because if you line 10 people up in a room and you ask each of them, what mindset means to them, I'm almost certain that 80% of them would have a totally different viewpoint, maybe even 100%, right? Because that means different things to different people. And nowadays, man, you go online and you go on YouTube and everybody has an opinion about being a mindset guru.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that? And the only reason why I ask you this, is you're a wrestler, right? So very different perspective on mindset than most people. So can you share what that means to you and how you're able to translate that into this business?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to go right back to wrestling with that too.
I knew you would, man.
Yeah. I think anything ever accomplished starts in the mind, right? So, I won a state championship my senior year, and I don't share that to brag, but I share that because I didn't start wrestling until my freshman year of high school. But it was my junior year, after going 2 and out at state, that I was convinced in my head, like in my mind, I was convinced I will win the state championship that next year. So for an entire year, everything I did, like that was in my mind. Like that's how I trained. I thought about, when I would go on runs, like I visualized, winning the state championship. I visualized anyone who would beat me in the past. Like I was dead set. It wasn't like, I want to win. I think I'm going to win. It was like, I will win. Like that's what I said. And not only did I say it, I full-heartedly believed it. And so it's a lot like when I decided I was going to be an investor and my friends are saying, well, how are you going to do that? That doesn't, you don't have money. You don't have an education. I didn't know how, but I knew that I would. Like I was dead set, 100% convinced in my mind that I would be financially free and that real estate would be the path. So when I think of mindset, I think of a full belief that something is capable and that you can do it, that you're able to do it. Not I wish or I want, but I will. And then you start stacking those dominoes to make it actually happen. Like just like a state championship, it wasn't like I just, law of attraction. I wanted it and I sat around and ate chips. I trained my ass off. And the same thing with, the real estate world. I knew what I wanted. I had a long-term vision, these long-term goals, and then I had to put in the work to get there.
You mean it doesn't just fall from the heavens, man?
Not quite.
Success doesn't just fall from the heavens. Oh, come on. All right, Gabe. So now we're going to get into a fun conversation. Okay. We're going to start wrapping this up because we're towards the end of the show, but I love the analogy on mindset and how you were able to translate that into this business. And really, we can apply that to pretty much anything in life, right? But I think
absolutely,
it's really cool to see how you've been able to transition that training and that mindset and that skill right into this business to propel yourself forward. So now we're going to have a little bit of fun. Okay. Here's where we're going to start bringing everything together. So describe your ideal investment. Okay. Especially in this market and why. So everybody has a concept of their ideal investment, right? In your case, kind of unique because you've done seller financing for a while. You bought different types of properties doing that. So talk a little bit about what your ideal investment looks like in this market and why.
Yeah, it might sound kind of boring, but my ideal investment in this market is very similar to those first couple deals that I've done. A low money down or a no money down deal. Come on, a no money down deal, low interest rate. Sometimes sellers will say, well, what kind of terms do you want? And I say, I want no money down with the best price and the lowest interest rate I can get, right?
Fair.
That's the ideal investment. But, in this market or any market, I want a deal, and I mentioned it before, that pencils today, right? It has to pencil today. I love speculating in the sense of, yes, I think rents are low and could go up. Yes, I think there's hidden value in the property. But my ideal investment in this market or any other market is it pencils today. It cash flows from the day I buy it, and there's still all that upside.
I really appreciate the way that you said that. What asset class? Is there a specific asset class that you would ideally like to buy into with your ideal terms?
Yeah, I like multifamily. I went into mobile home parks for my last couple of purchases because I felt like cap rates and returns were just getting condensed down to almost nothing in multifamily. It's funny because I'm actually really attracted to like brand new construction, modern, beautiful buildings. Most of my stuff's like 100 years old and, not that pretty and definitely not modern. At some point I may shift to that. But yeah, I like those properties that are poorly managed, under rented, deferred maintenance. That's, to me, it just creates a great scenario for value add. And then of course it has to pencil today.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, Gabe, you've been a tremendous guest to have on. I really appreciate you sharing your experience with our audience. I have a lot of nuggets, man, that I've taken away, from this show. And, I look forward to continuing to stay connected. And
Absolutely.
I want to welcome you to the We Build Great Apartment Community network of amazing guests. You're now a part of that unique club. And I'm here for you, man, when you need me. I appreciate you being on the show and sharing your experiences and some lessons learned. And how do people get a hold of you, Gabe, if they want to reach out and have a conversation with you, or even, talk about some investment opportunities?
Yeah, the best way to find me, I'm active on Instagram, just Gabriel R. Hamel, or if you just search Gabriel Hamel, you'll find me. And then my website's hamelinvestments.com. And I'll have a link to this show when it comes out. And there's some other podcasts that I've been on that are on that website as well too. And I message anyone that messages me, I message back. So
awesome.
Shoot me a message and I'll get back to anybody.
Awesome. All right, bud. Hey, well, thanks so much for being on. Really enjoyed having you on the show, and I will talk to you soon, but to your continued success.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Clarity of purpose creates our greatest competitive advantage. When we transform apartment buildings to thriving communities, we improve how people live and create assets with high profit margins. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this up with a friend. I'm John Brackett, bringing you things you can implement right away.